Vaughn here with the Greenfield School District, ready to read you a story, and I'm glad you picked to turn this on tonight and be able to watch this before you go to bed. Tonight, we're going to read Little Leaders, Bold Women in Black History. So these we're going to talk about mamas and sisters and aunties that are wonderful, powerful women who have done amazing things for the United States, and they just happen to be African American or Black. So we're going to celebrate them today, and this is written by Vashti Harrison. Hola comunidad de Greenfield, soy Superintendente Albana aquí con ustedes. Estamos celebrando la historia de los africanos americanos. Este libro para hoy se llama Líderes, Señoras o Mujeres con Fuerza y en la historia de los africanos americanos. So este libro tiene muchas historias de las personas, las mujeres, que hicieron cosas fantásticas en nuestra nación. So we're going to learn about them today. Vamos a aprender de ellas hoy. Y este es escrito por Vashti Harrison. So I hope you enjoy this. It's many stories, many of their lives, but I'm going to just read a few because there's probably about 50 in this book. And so we do want to hear about a few of them, and so we can celebrate all that they've done. That's the table of contents. So there's a lot of wonderful women that happen to be Black that did some really great things in America. Okay, so I am going to start with the very first one, and this one is a poet. Her name is Phyllis Wheatley, and let's think about poetry. Sometimes in your classes you write poems, things that rhyme with each other or they make a lot of sense, and just different things that are really beautiful when it comes to poetry. So this lady, Phyllis Wheatley, was born in 1753 and she died in 1784. So that's a really long time ago, less than 300 years ago. So let's see what it's all about. All right, Phyllis's literary skills were apparently very good early on. She published her first story when she was only about 14 years old. For anyone, this would be a major feat, but for Phyllis, this was so easy and unique. Her original name, date of birth, and exact birthplace were all unknown. When she was only 8 years old, she was taken from her home in Africa and sold to a trader and became a slave. Then she was transported across the Atlantic to Boston, Massachusetts, aboard a ship named the Phyllis. She was then resold to a family and a man named John Wheatley, who purchased her to be a personal servant to his wife. The Wheatleys soon recognized she was very intelligent and began to nurture it. They taught Phyllis everything from theology to mythology and gave her an education that was rare for women and nearly unheard of for a woman of color. With the family's backing, she traveled to England to publish her first book, Poems on Various Subjects, Religion and Morals. She was the first African-American woman poet ever to be published. She corresponded with George Washington and the famous French writer and philosopher Voltaire, who called her a master of English. Her work was so powerful that the abolitionists used it as an example of the intelligence and promise of Black people. In 1767, she was emancipated and freed as a slave. Unfortunately, she struggled financially and lived in poverty for the rest of her life. She received a great deal of praise during her lifetime, but validation from white society was an integral part of her success, but it never came. She continued writing, but was not able to find a publisher in America that would publish her work. Her natural talent and body of work live on as fundamental contributions to American literature. So wow, she was a young poet, but because of the color of her skin, they didn't want to publish her work and she couldn't be part of the school books, but she was really, really good. So that is a story about Phyllis Wheatley. She still persevered and she still would write poetry, even though nobody would recognize it. She loved it because she was really good at it. Okay, let's see, Harriet Tubman. This one you'll probably have heard maybe in some storybooks. Harriet Tubman was born in 1822 and she died in 1913. And she was an abolitionist, she was a nurse, she was a scout, and she was a spy. One of 9 children, Harriet was born into slavery under the name Araminta Harriet Ross. But her parents, they were West African, and they were hailing from the Ashanti warrior tribe. While many of her siblings were sold and traded to distant plantations, one good fortune Harriet had was to remain united with her parents throughout her youth. When she became 15 years old, Harriet was accidentally hit on the head with an iron weight and fell into a coma for 3 days. Her brain injury resulted in narcolepsy, a permanent disorder that caused her to fall asleep at random times. Fearing her slave owner would eventually discover her injury, she decided to run away to avoid the risk of being sold or traded. After escaping freedom in 1849, Harriet could have stayed in the North, but now that she knew it was possible to escape, she wanted to return to her family and anyone else she could rescue. Over the course of 11 years, she returned to the South 13 times and led more than 70 men, women, and children to freedom, and safely helped them in the Underground Railroad known as the Conductor. She never lost a passenger, and she saved many people to freedom. It wasn't the last time, but during the Civil War, Harriet served as an army nurse and went undercover as a spy for the North. Harriet was always looking to help other people. What very little she gave to others. She lived in poverty most of her life and donated her time, money, and property to help people that were in need. In 2016, which is only 4 years ago, the U.S. Treasury announced a historic proposal to change the $20 bill. It would replace the longtime face of Andrew Jackson with Harriet Tubman, making her the first woman on the front of any U.S. paper money. Wow, that's pretty big. All right, let me think. One more we'll read to you, because this one I read to you this week. Rosa Parks. She was born in 1913 and she died in 2005. So she died 16 years ago. She was an activist and she was a writer. Growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa detested the rules of segregation. Having to drink from different water fountains and have to go to different restaurants from the white people was not what she was fond of. And in the South, the rules for riding the bus were particularly harsh. A black person had to either enter through the front door, pay the fare, exit the bus, and then re-enter through the back. Each bus had 3 sections. A section for whites only, a section for blacks only, and a neutral section in the middle. If the middle was empty, a black person could sit there, but only if it was empty. But if one white person wanted to sit in the middle, every black person was supposed to get up and stand in the back of the bus. In December of 1955, after a long shift at her work, Rosa waited for a bus with empty seats. And finally she got on and sat in a seat. But she had to sit in the neutral section. But before long, the white section became full, and Rosa and others were asked to move. Enough was enough for Rosa. She refused to move and relinquish her seat. The bus driver filed charges, called the police, and Rosa was arrested and thrown in jail. She used her one phone call to contact her friends at the NAACP. The NAACP is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Rosa was not the first person to fight against these laws, and it wasn't even her first time. She had been arrested previously for defying these rules, but her protests ignited a reaction that caught the attention of the whole United States of America. And so the Montgomery began the Montgomery bus boycott, which was a key event of the civil rights movement and set off a chain reaction of protests across the United States. The boycott was ultimately successful in 1956 when the bus system was integrated. But there was still a long way to go to fight for civil rights, and Rosa continued to work with the NAACP and the Black Power movement throughout her life. And that's just 3. There are so many more stories of powerful women who did really great, bold things in this book. So I'll try to add some more next week when we read as well, okay? So thank you for joining me today, boys and girls. I'm really happy to read you a bedtime story before you go to bed so we keep learning together. I'm Superintendent Galvan with the Greenfield School District, sending a great big bear hug from our family to yours.